Welcome back, dear friends of the Ancient Kingdom. Today I would like to analyze with you one of the most fascinating and, to my mind, frightening theories that the human brain has ever conceived. Luffy and Joyboy are the same person in space and time. So we are considering the idea of time travel. If you're ready, then I'd say it's time to get started.
Who was Joyboy as far as we know at present? Joyboy was a Jimbutsu, meaning a person, an individual, so someone who lived during the empty century. We don't know what people he belonged to, humans, giants, space pirates. He was a person, and Robin points this out, so he was a Hito from 800 years ago. The word Hito in Japan is used to refer to a human being because in our world, barring incredible plot twists, Homo sapiens sapiens is the only humanoid species on the planet. In OnePiece, this is not the case, so it should be translated by the more generic term, person, someone. We know that Joyboy was a pirate, the first one in the history, was friends with the giant elephant Zunesha, believed to be his nakama, a companion, and that he broke a promise made to the island of the fishmen, details of which are unknown even to the royal family of Ryugu, who however retain the memory or hearsay that someone will one day come to fulfill this promise on Joyboy's behalf. To apologize for that broken promise, Joyboy left engraved on a poneglyph a letter of apology for Poseidon, the 800-year-old mermaid princess. In the same way that Robin learned of Joyboy's existence with this poneglyph, it was for Roger, who before then had the opportunity to read and discover various taboos of the world. First thanks to the island of Lodestar, and then thanks to Kozuki Oden, belonging to the only family in the world capable of reading and writing in that archaic script. Also placed beside this poneglyph was a second stone, one of the 4 road poneglyphs by which the coordinates for the last mysterious island on which Joyboy left his immense treasure could be found. In our present, as you know, she has disappeared and is in the possession of the man with the fire scar. Now, let us examine the arrival at Laugh Tale. Roger and crew arrive on the last island and leave claiming to have discovered everything. They have learned about the ancient weapons, the D and the Void Century. They know that Wano was once open and connected to the whole world, and that Joyboy's treasure really exists. This, however, has left them so astounded that they burst into fat laughter, so much so that they call the island by the name Laugh Tale, literally laughing yarn, joke, a funny story in short. Moving away from the island, Roger declares that they have arrived too early. They must wait for someone to arrive. Apparently, they have discovered that in about 25 years, from that time, something would happen that would turn the world upside down. Therefore, their task will be to make that happen. Roger, now nearing death, decides to dismantle the crew, then begets a son with the hope that that child will become the expected person, then turns himself into the navy and uses the occasion of his public death to begin the great era of piracy, in the hope that that person, probably his son, will take to the sea and reach the far reaches of the Grand Line. All of this means that in Laugh Tale, Roger has learned of a date on which an event of global significance will undoubtedly occur. In essence, we might as well call this a prophecy. Samurai Kozuki Oden gives us additional insights to dwell on. After Laugh Tale, the mighty warrior of Wano, hitherto shrouded in ignorance because he was born and lived for 30 years in a country totally isolated from the world, knows exactly that 25 years from now, a group of strong pirates would come to the new world, reach his homeland and liberate it. The one who would drive out the oppressor would be known as Joyboy, the long-awaited person. For this very reason, he knew that he would have to reopen the borders of Wano to welcome the pirate into the country so that the ancient weapon Pluton, hidden in the bowels of the country, could be freed from its captivity. You might say to yourself, if he knew someone would defeat the oppressor with such confidence, why attack Kaido and risk death? Or why submit to the dragons and Orochi's anguish for so many years? For me, the answer lies in the letter Oden leaves to his wife. Toki, if I fail to defeat Kaido, know that in 20 years a giant war may break out that will divide the seas. The protagonists of this war will come to the new world, and they may be the ones to defeat Kaido. He basically tells Toki that he will try anyway because he has reached the end of his rope. Too bad, if he does not win, he has read that in 20 years someone should come along who will be able to defeat the enemy instead. As if to say, in Laugh Tale I have read the future, but I cannot be certain that I have read the absolute truth. According to what I read, the country of Wano is waiting for people, and one person in particular. I am going to go out on a limb when in doubt, but in case it goes wrong, know that it may come to them. Be patient. The whole world is waiting for him. To support this, we also have the words of Dr. Crocus, who was really waiting for pirates, not civilians, not revolutionaries, soldiers, scouts. Pirates. or Lady Toki, who has traveled forward in time from the Void Century to look for someone. Oden, aware of this, tells her specifically that to find what she was looking for, all she had to do was travel another 20 years into the future. Here, in addition to testifying for the umpteenth time that Oden knows future events, it is hinted that Toki, who comes from 800 years earlier, also knows them, albeit in a fragmented and partial way compared to her husband. She had set out to find someone specific who would do a specific thing for her. But then, as we know, love is a hurricane, and she stood by Oden's side, knowing that the man was not one at random, and that, in high probability, he would still lead her to the dawn of the world. Be that as it may, the important thing is that the people of the past knew with almost absolute certainty what would happen 800 years into their future, so we can say some people who lived at that time left records of the future in Laugh Tale. Now, since the person who will change the world is Luffy, and it cannot be anyone else because he is the protagonist of the story, it is written in Laugh Tale that the pirate, who will be recognized as Joyboy, will come to the New World after 800 years, together with his crew and other strong pirates, to liberate the country of Wano, and then to be the protagonists of a great giant war that will divide the seas. How on earth could the people of 800 years ago have known this history? I can't prove in any way that Luffy or any of his crew will travel back in time, but that someone living 800 years ago would know facts about 800 years later with maniacal accuracy seems pretty much a given to me, considering the above. The easiest possibility is that someone existed in the past who, like Madame Charlie, had the ability to predict the future with so much accuracy and foresight that it truly seemed like absolute prophecy, or someone will travel back in time. Playing with the elements at our disposal, we can use the following evidence to highlight some particularly interesting points. The mayor of Windmill, who seems anything but an ordinary citizen of an innocuous little village in the East Blue, wonders with a very thoughtful face if Luffy was not simply destined to become a pirate, as if he knows anything. Zunesha, from several kilometers away from Wano, hears the drums of liberation produced by Luffy's heartbeat in awakening mode and states Joyboy is back. He later expands a bit, saying, "It's as if you were there. I can't help but think it's destiny," hinting that he himself does not exactly associate Luffy with his old comrade. But 1. He does not see him or talk to him together. 2. Even the most loyal friend would not believe that you went back in time and returned after 800 years. Luffy, however, will reiterate several times that he is Luffy Straw Hat, as if this has not changed him at all. So this being Joyboy is simply a nickname that is associated with the transformation, due to the fruit of the god Nika, the liberator of the oppressed. However, after Luffy wins the battle, the people of Wano will learn that it was a guy named Joyboy who defeated Kaido and has already left the country. Roger in Laugh Tale says he wished he had lived in Joyboy's time, as if to say that individual's time was better than his present. If Joyboy, as first King Neptune and then Dr. Vegapunk tell us, lived during the Void Century, and that Void Century is an era of war as Clover and Vegapunk told us, or of slavery as told to us by the Dwarf King, I personally find it hard that Roger wanted to have been born in that era, although the ancient kingdom was extremely advanced in technology and ideals. I would have understood if he was talking about before the Hollow Age, when the old kingdom was prosperous but during the century just not. So it could be, as many have said, that the era that Roger is referring to is the future, not the past. That is, what would have happened 20 years or so into the future, because Roger would have died and could not have seen this future, the era when Joyboy would return and triumph. Yet someone, in order to return, must at least have left earlier. And if the power is Nika's, and Joyboy is just a nickname, then why not say that it is Nika who has returned? If you think about it, the most sensible thing is Nika coming back with the awakening through the body of the person who ate it, because the possessor of the fruit shares DNA with this mythological god, so why is it Joyboy who returned? Because if Luffy had really splashed back in time to the Void Century, alone or not I don't know, he might have done everything we've talked about so far. The thing that most inflames me is that Joyboy, 800 years ago, had the same power as Luffy, a power that had never been awakened since, coincidentally, right up to the time when Luffy is fighting against the Wano invader, as indicated by Oden. This may well be just a coincidence, but if it was Luffy himself who went back in time, things would get very interesting, starting with the fact that the fruit has always escaped the government, which for obvious time loop reasons had to return to its master. In addition, Luffy already knew Zunisha, so they may have become friends in the past as well. Luffy even hears and understands Zunisha's barbs, so I see no problem with that. Luffy knows very well the dream of the fishmen, so he may have fought with them during the Void Century with the knowledge that in the future he and his comrades would bring them into the sunlight. The letter of apology, since Neptune knows nothing about it, might even be addressed to Shirahoshi, not to Poseidon of 800 years ago. It might trivially apologize to her for not keeping the promise made to each other that Luffy failed to accompany her to a forest in the outside world. Then again, why leave a letter of apology to the mermaid princess of 800 years ago on an indestructible stone addressed to posterity and written in an indecipherable language, if not by a Kozuki or Nico Robin 800 years down the road? Could Poseidon of 800 years ago read poneglyphs? Luffy also knows about Pluton and knows where it will be in the future, so he may even have suggested himself where to put it, perhaps naively. In addition, he will soon know the location of Laugh Tale, so once he goes back he may reach it again, leave his greatest treasure there, and then get the Kozuki from 800 years ago to engrave his coordinates on roads, coincidentally, then placed in places friendly to Luffy, such as Zo, Wano, Shandora, and Ryugu, so that one day he himself will find them together with his companions and be able to find the island and his own treasure. Perhaps this is all too much for an airhead like Luffy. Yes, maybe it is, maybe it is. What is certain in all this is that without a shadow of a doubt, the story told in Laugh Tale is theirs, and someone in the past knew it. So what could Joyboy's treasure be? Well, pretending that Luffy will really be the Joyboy of the past, I like the idea that he left Laugh Tale his greatest treasure, namely his straw hat. Why do I think this? Well, first of all, Luffy has always said that the hat is his greatest treasure, complete with very shady dialogue in Volume 2 between him and Nami, where the girl believes that Luffy hides a treasure map or jewels inside it. But the most interesting thing makes me think of this particular panel. We see Rayleigh his flashback, where he meets Roger wearing the straw hat, therefore at the phrase, he has become an even better man for wearing that hat. Obviously you go and connect him to Roger himself, since the hat that Luffy is wearing is Roger's. But if Roger in Laugh Tale had seen his very own hat which he had given to Shanks a few years earlier, imagine the moment. Luffy, going back in time, would have left Roger's hat at Laugh Tale, so the pirate, upon arriving there, would have been confronted with the very same hat that he himself wore on his head a few years earlier, and that a decade later, the same Shanks would have given to Luffy. An alluring mess. Seeing the hat and connecting it to the story read, Roger may also have instructed Shanks to deliver that very hat to the very person who would be born 10 years from now to fulfill that incredible mission, so that he himself could see his own Laugh Tale hat again and continue this endless loop. Roger then had himself executed to kick off the era of piracy, because without that gesture, Luffy would never have taken to the sea. That was basically the trigger for the events that would lead to the world being turned upside down. Having made this meteoric flight into absolute rot, I would like to analyze with you instead what destroys this whole discourse. First, the fruit issue. If Luffy were to go back in time, the Gom Gom fruit would enter a deadly loop in the style of was the chicken or the egg born first, though thus going to break the Nika argument at its base. Either Nika never existed in the first place and is simply a legend that becomes a legend precisely because of this loop, or there is a moment in time when two equal devil's fruits exist in the world, i.e., at the moment when Luffy returns to the past. It would be very reminiscent of the movie Back to the Future Part 2, where there are two Marty McFlys in 1955. The giant hat in Marioa, no one at this time can say that hat was Joyboy's, although we all thought it might have been. If the hat is that size, it is hard to believe that Luffy could be Joyboy, who at this point was much larger in size than the normal human Monkey D. Luffy. If I wanted to come up with a solution, I could make up that the hat remained that size because Joyboy died in battle while in awakening mode, as seen against Kaido when Luffy had become giant. There the hat cannot be seen. Oda does not draw it, so it is obviously laughable. We cannot say that the hat can remain that size once altered by the power of the Hito Hito fruit. If that were not the case and that hat was Joyboy's, the character was at least a superhuman the size of half-giant, like Newgate, Kuma, Kaido, Big Mom, certainly not a 6-foot guy. The defeat of Joyboy. After the words of Clover and Vegapunk, we take it for granted that the ancient kingdom has been defeated and destroyed by the 20 allied kingdoms. Although, as we should all know, One Piece is a manga based on assumptions, so everything could still be questioned. Nothing denies us from thinking at the moment that the ancient kingdom allowed itself to be beaten for a greater good, with the knowledge that 800 years later, everything would be back in place. But even if it were, I cannot imagine Luffy getting beaten for a greater good. Although, as seen in Jaya, he is willing to take a beating if he is aware that this will not benefit anyone. Just as Teach also says, there are battles that cannot be won by force, so this is more of a maybe than an absolute no. Time travel. We have seen Toki's fruit that only allows you to travel forward in time. However, this does not mean that there is no fruit that can bring you back. Just as there are opposite fruits between Rogia and Paramisha, capable of cancelling each other out, there could also be a fruit or technology, why not a time machine, that can take someone back in time. However, since it is only a big assumption, it is not an element on which a true theory can be made, so without this element, everything collapses without question. So let's say that until you have total tombstone proof of the possibility that there is something capable of turning you around, the whole argument goes out the window. Although, and I'll close after this one, if Joyboy were really to be Luffy, we could imagine it as a post-credits scene, something Oda shows us at the end of everything, where the sensei shows us what One Piece is. According to him in an interview, it is the last thing he will show us. He is a Luffy turned back in time, leaving the treasure in Laugh Tale with a sly smile, aware of what would happen 800 years from now, the dawn of a grand adventure that will lead to a world where everyone is friends and can eat their fill. But of course, this is all a laugh tale. Having said that, I salute you. I hope you enjoyed yourselves and appreciated the fantasy. If you have items to add, or if you want to totally dismantle the theory, be my guest and have fun. Leave a like, sign up, and see you next time. Bye bye.